New message.
Hey, man, it's Devin. You know, from that time you accidentally emailed me because you thought I was a different Devin. Oh, and your email signature said confidential. If you receive this in error, please delete. That's so you. Anyway, I heard you bought a boat. When are we setting sail, Captain?
When you get a boat, you also get new friends. Make sure Progressive's one of them and get coverage today for as little as $100 a year.
Oh, and no, you did not receive this message in error.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Annual premium for basic liability policy not available in all states.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. Today's episode is, it's really cool. We're exploring freediving. This is almost like, what the show got started with was exploring new adventure sports. Now we tell a lot of stories through adventure sports, but Alexander is going to take us into the world of freediving and what's so addicting about it. It reminded me of climbing, the culture around it when researching this, because folks that do this really get into it. It's kind of like climbing where people just sell everything and they do anything they can to climb. It's like a drug almost. And Alexander is going to tell us all about how he got into it, what the sensations are like when you're down there, literally free diving for either a record. He has a world record at 85 meters. I think that's for, I'm not sure exactly what the parameter of that record was, but I know he has some records. Maybe that's the Swedish record. But also, he's going to talk about some of the practical applications of free diving where you can literally just hold your breath a really long amount of time and go exploring the bottom of the ocean, whether that's in reefs or just shallower areas where you don't have to have any equipment. It's really neat. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you learn as much as I did. And you never know. Maybe this is something, I don't know if I'm ever going to do this. I'm kind of terrified of deep water, but it's getting better living at the ocean. But maybe this is in our future. I know Alexander never thought it would be in his life, but here we are. Now it's his biggest passion. That's kind of how it works. Adventure sports kind of have a way of biting you and never letting go. Let's put it that way. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, folks, we are talking about something new for me. I'm trying to think if the previous hosts ever did this. I don't think we've ever talked about this specifically. I know it's been mentioned in passing, but free diving with a record holder here, Alexander Nilsson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mason. And it's great to be here. And I'm so happy to be able to talk to you about my passion. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I'm excited too, because you can really sense when someone is very, very passionate about something. There's a lot of people on the show that have lots of different interests, and I'm sure you do too, but you can definitely tell this is a big part of your life. So with someone that knows that much about it and devotes that much time to it, I'm really excited to talk. But before we get started, I always ask this first. Where are you coming from? Where is home for you?
So home for me is, first of all, where I come from. I come from Sweden. I grew up in the capital. So I grew up in Stockholm, in Sweden. So I grew up really far away from the water. In the winter, we don't really spend any time in the water, and I kind of only spend time in the water during the holidays. So I come from Stockholm. When I was 19 or 20, I started traveling. So since I was 19 or 20, I have been living abroad. I'm 31 right now, so I lived abroad from that age. So I kind of right now, I don't really have a place that I really feel like I call home. But yeah, for the question of where I grew up, it's Sweden, and that's where I am right now as well. I'm teaching freediving, and I just happy and feel really privileged to be able to just teach other people this really beautiful sport. That's where I am right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, you say you didn't swim much. I know there's a lot of water around Stockholm, at least, but it's cold. What did you grow up doing? What were kind of the activities? Because I know you didn't discover freediving or start freediving until 2016, which, you're in your mid to late 20s at that point, mid-20s. What were you doing up until that point? Was it any other sort of sport? What was your passions then?
Yeah, so I grew up in this family where my father was a soccer coach, and I grew up doing all different kind of sports, soccer, bandy, and so on. But I was always kind of like mediocre in this kind of sports. But I would say that I had an upbringing with a lot of sports around me. So that, of course, helped me later in life when I stumbled upon freediving. So for my whole upbringing until the time when I discovered freediving, I was just out playing around, doing all kinds of sports, and being very, very active. And like you said, like Sweden, of course, we're surrounded, Stockholm especially, we're surrounded by 14 islands, a lot of water around, but the water's really cold, like 8 or 9 months of the year. So we have the swimming pools, but I've never really been a fan of swimming pools, the chlorine, and I never really liked it. I was always drawn to the ocean, and to be close to nature. And that's what really was alluring to me when I found freediving. Like I said, I was like late 20s when I discovered the sports. And like many of you listeners know, there's not a lot of sports where you can start that late in life and still become the best in your country, be able to be really good at a sport. Freediving is one of those few sports where you actually get better with age. We have a lot of freedivers, professional freedivers, who actually break records when they're up to their 50s. We had the best freediver in the world, Natalia Molchanova, who sadly passed away a few years back. And she broke most of her records when she was 50 and over 50.
Is that just due to lung capacity and also maybe technique, but also it's not very hard on your body or on your joints in the sense of pounding pavement or pounding on the ligaments and whatnot?
Yeah, exactly, Mason. So it's like, so freediving is very different from all other kind of extreme sports. Other extreme sports, like when you go downhill skiing, for example, you build up adrenaline and you perform better when you have a lot of adrenaline in your body. And freediving, you have the opposite. So we want to have as little adrenaline as possible, and we want to be as calm as possible. And with age, usually you get calmer. And also metabolic rate is changing when you get older. And all these physiological factors have a big influence on freediving. So freediving is all about being able to stay calm in a stressful situation. So if you're able to stay calm down there at depths of like 80 or 100 meters, there's like endless of opportunities when it comes to freediving. It doesn't really matter if you're like overweight or if you have a bad cardio or if you're a smoker, for that matter. It's all about if you're able to stay calm in this situation. So that's what also was one of the things that really draw my attention to freediving, that I really loved. Where it's so mental. We usually say it's like 90% mental and 10% physical in freediving. And like with a lot of different sports, it's similar, but not to the same extent. Here's like, when I go to a freediving competition, I still get surprised when I see a lot of other competitors, and I see that they're not in their best physical shape, but they can still dive to 100 meters, and it's incredible to see. It's a very forgiving sport in that matter.
That's really it sounds like yoga, the way you're describing it, in the sense of being as calm as possible, being as relaxed as possible. So, but you say you have to stay that way or you're not going to perform well. What are some of the, and by the way, I don't know if we defined freediving, but freediving is diving depths or exploring underwater without any equipment or without scuba gear or without pressurized air. You can still snorkel and free dive, it sounds like. I was looking at your Instagram and you were exploring, or is freediving only diving down and coming back up, going as far as you can?
So the definition of freediving, you could say, is everything you do underwater on a breath hold.
Okay.
And that's freediving. Doesn't matter if you go down 1 meter or half a meter or 100 meters. Everything you do on a breath hold under the water, that's freediving.
Whether that's breaking a record or exploring the bottom of the ocean in a coral reef or something.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many different interests. When it comes to freediving, most people, of course, they don't go to freediving competitions, and that's not the reason why they like to freedive. Most people, they do it for reasons of like they love taking underwater photos, and their freediving is a perfect way to come close to underwater creatures. Or they just love, like you said, exploring underwater, looking at rocks, and having the quiet and the peaceful time on the water. And then there are a few of these crazy people that loves to go to freediving competitions and dive to really deep depths, and and that's just a very, very few amount of people.
What got you into it? Tell us about, because 2016, what did you see? What did you discover? And why do you think it hooked you so much? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was kind of aimless during that time. I had just finished studies, and I ended up doing something I didn't like. And I saw all of my friends went into the corporate world, and they just were okay with the situation, and they were like, okay, let's just suffer it through and then get the paycheck. And I wanted to do something different, and I never really liked this life in Sweden that I was living at that point in time. So I decided when I was 21, I think I went out to travel. So I went to Southeast Asia. And there I went traveling for the next 5 years. Just solo traveling for the entire time around Southeast Asia first and around Europe. And I went back to Thailand then when I was 25 or 26. And I remember I saw this sign where it said, like, we teach you how to dive to 20 meters on one breath. And I had a recollection when I was younger that I saw this movie, The Big Blue, Le Grand Bleu. It's one old movie from, I think, late 70s about freediving. And I remember this movie, and I really found it so poetic. And I've always been drawn to the depth in a sense, since when I was a kid. I remember that we had a boat in my summer cottage place, my family's summer cottage place, and me and my father used to go out on this boat when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I would be sitting in front of the boat, and I would ask my father all the time, how deep is it here? How deep is it here? How deep is it here? Being this annoying kid asking this question. And I always found it very fascinating with the depths. I always wanted to know what it was down there. And I already, at that point when I was a very young kid, understood there was another world down there, and I wanted to explore it. But it wasn't until when I was traveling there, when I was 25 years old, and I saw this sign, that I was like, okay, I should do this course and see what happens. And the first day of the course, I couldn't equalize. When you have to equalize your ears to get down, I had big problems with just going down a few meters. And then the second day, everything just opened up, and I was able to just play around in the water. And from that day on, I just wanted to get back to the water. It was kind of like this passion and this love in my body that always reminded me when I wasn't in the water, I was always missing the water. And I asked my freediving instructor, which was a really great freediving instructor to have in the beginner course, and she was telling me, like, you should come and do the second course, because there you will explore something which is called free fall. And I asked her, of course, what is the free fall? And she told me that that's when you're sinking down as a rock, and it happens from around 15 meters. And then I went home. The first thing I did was to look at videos of people free falling, and it's when I saw that, that's when I knew this is something that I have to explore. So I went back to Sweden. I was back home doing different jobs, some odd jobs, and so on, just collecting money to go back there, to go back to Thailand. And I decided to devote 4 months of my life there and just see what happens. And of course, I had no clue that this is gonna be the next, part of my life, just to spend underwater. But I just went there for 4 months and just diving. I did nothing else than sleep and dive. And I explored this free fall, and from there on, I just decided, okay, I just want to continue free falling. I don't care how deep I get. I just care how many seconds I can continue free falling. Because the feeling was something which is hard to explain. Feels like flying. You come from, when you're floating on the surface, you're positively buoyant. And then you go down to around 10 meters. There you are around, we call it neutral buoyancy. You continue deeper to around 15 meters. From there on, you start to feel that the bottom is dragging you down. That's how it feels like. Because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to kick with your fins. You don't have to pull on the rope. You can just relax and you sink, and then you sink faster and faster. And during this time, you're in the water and the pressure is increasing, and you're coming further and further away from the surface, of course. And there you just have to switch off. And when you're in this state of mind, and when you're in this kind of environment in the ocean, and you just go deeper and deeper, 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, and you just see how it gets darker and darker for every meter. And it gets colder and colder. You're just down there by yourself as well, because a lot of people think that you're diving with other safety divers, but you're by yourself down there. And exploring these sensations is what hooked me. It was never about numbers or break records. This is something which came, of course, with the exploration of the free fall and the depth. But my aim was always just to increase this feeling of the free fall, which is something that I've never explored before.
Do you think that any sort of encompassing sport or adventure sport could have been that for you? Or do you think it was specifically freediving? Like, say if rock climbing would have come across during this time you were searching, or something to do with another sport, or do you, something even equally as extreme, I guess? Or do you think it was something specific about freediving that drew you in? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster. And for free. That's my favorite part, by the way. I have personally used LinkedIn for my hiring experiences, and it's worked really well. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs and reach a network of over 810 million people. And of those 810 million people, there are at least 40 million looking for jobs every single week. You can add the job, screen people, simple tools, easy to use, and quickly prioritize who's a good candidate and who isn't. And all this is why LinkedIn Jobs is rated #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors for small businesses. So if you're ready to find the right candidates fast and post your job for free, go to linkedin.com/ASP. That's linkedin.com/ASP to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I know a lot of the people listening to this show are doing their part to help fight climate change and not leave such a big carbon footprint on the earth. Well, I'm going to give you a new tool to add to your arsenal, and that is the Aspiration Zero credit card. How it works is every time you use it, they plant 2 trees. So literally every time you swipe your card, they plant 2 trees, which is about how much carbon dioxide is used every day or produced every day by the average American, is about how much 2 trees can absorb. So what's really cool is you can rest assured every time you use it, they're planting 2 trees. And to date, they've already planted 75 million trees. So if you want to make your dollars make a difference, apply for the Aspiration Zero credit card today and earn a $300 bonus after spending $3,000 in the first 90 days. Apply now at aspiration.com/ASP to go carbon neutral effortlessly and earn a $300 bonus. Go to aspiration.com/ASP. The Aspiration Zero MasterCard is issued by Beneficial State Bank pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Good credit required. Terms and conditions apply. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Yeah, that's a good question. It all goes down also to the theory, like you just find something and it's about like doing it enough time, and then you get passion for it as well, and could be as well. It's really hard to say. I don't know for sure.
It's hard for me to choose anything because I talk to so many people like you who are doing so many cool things. Like, oh, now I want to do that. It's hard to pick one. So I was just curious, but it sounds like once you start, it's almost addicting. It's like that. Yeah. The escape from the world. I can imagine it's just an amazing experience.
Yeah, exactly. And also, what I would like to say, Mason, is that when you finally find something that you're good at, when you're better than you used to be, like I said, I used to play soccer when I was younger, when I was always like this, like mediocre. I was never excelling. I was not the best in the soccer team or whatever. But now I found something which I was actually quite good at, which I felt that I was exceeding in, and that also gave me some kind of purpose, during this aimless period of my life when you're solo traveling around the world. It all sounds very cool and adventurous, but sometimes it can also be lonely and sad times. And, I found freediving there, and finally I had something that I could do, and I could also have an aim for something, could aim to be better at this. And I was seeing that I got better and better with time, like freediving is also a thing that you get quite good with a pretty short period of time. And I think that's also what I liked about it. And I think it also helps, to be totally frank with you, that it's such a few amount of people maybe in the world that do freediving. So when you go to a freediving competition, it's not really hard to get on the podium. So
it's the same people each time.
Exactly.
That's too funny. Well, I did some research on freediving and what it is and some common mistakes and whatnot, but take us through maybe some of your initial fears with it. What was something you feared that either turned out to not be true, and something that you didn't even think about at first, but then became a fear? And I want to ask, how did you feel about the ocean at this point? A lot of people are very scared of just the depths of the ocean. Was that one you had to overcome, or were you comfortable there?
I was always quite comfortable in the ocean. I grew up, in a family where we spent a lot of time in the ocean, where my father used to have a sailboat when I was younger, and I grew up around, spending the summers at least on the surface. And so I think therefore I had this kind of like familiarity with the ocean. And when it comes to the depths, I actually, at some periods of my freediving career, also grew a greater respect of the ocean. And not too long ago, a freediving friend of mine passed away during a freedive. And that also reminds me of that we have we need to have a great respect of this immense force that we're visiting. The ocean is just such a great force, and it can tumble you and it can kill you in an instant if you're not careful. So with time, I grew greater and greater amount of respect for the ocean, in the sense of like how I get into like my own performance. And I would say probably my first year of freediving, I was kind of what you would call crazy, and what I would do in the competitions. In my first year of freediving, I actually I blacked out in my first competition. Blacking out is when you faint, and it happens because you have low levels of oxygen, and so you get into a hypoxia state, and then the brain shuts down and you faint. And this happened in my first competition. Never happened after that, and that just shows that I wasn't as careful as I should have been in the beginning, and I was just pushing the numbers, I guess, in the beginning too much. But when it comes to as well the fear, and I felt the fear sometimes when I'm at the depths. I can remember quite vividly when I was in the Philippines. I was training for a competition. I was doing a training dive to 75 meters. And I go down, and halfway down there, I could feel that the current is picking up. So the current is kind of like, because we're diving with a rope, which is kind of showing us the way down. And the current was picking up. But I knew that this was my last training dive before the competition, so I had to get down there. So I was kind of like pushing it down. And I could feel that the pressure was increasing, and I was tensing up. And the one thing you cannot do when you're freediving is to tense the muscles. So you have a lot of muscles around the lungs, and if you tense those, you can injure your lungs. And at 75 meters, I start to feel the urge to breathe. And I think most of your listeners have tried to hold their breath once in their life at least. And you know how it feels to have the urge to breathe after you've been holding your breath for a while. So I got this urge to breathe down there at 75 meters. And this just increased the amount of anxiety that I felt down there. And I had this thought, okay, now I'm down there, I'm 75 meters below the surface, and I had to get up quickly. I was just trying to rush up to the surface. And there, when I arrived up to the surface, I started to just cough up blood from my mouth. And there I realized that I had injured my lungs, and this is what we call a lung squeeze, which is one of the most dangerous things you can that you can have when you free dive. So you get scar tissues in the lungs, and this is making the blood come up to the mouth. So that was a really scary incident, and I think all of these kind of things led me to be the careful freediver that I am right now. Now I'm not taking these risks, and I know what we love to say in freediving. When we're teaching courses, because we like as many as possible to come and do courses, of course. So we're saying this is the safest extreme sport in the world, because there's only one fatality during the entire history that freediving has been a competitive sport. But what we don't say is how many people die training. Like with all extreme sports, there's a lot of fatalities when it comes to training and just doing it recreationally, as you know. The same is for climbing. Of course, there's not a lot of people dying when you compete in climbing, because you have all these safety precautions. But when it comes to training, a lot of people go by themselves, and they're careless and so on. Throughout my time there, I've been competitive freediver. I hear around once a year that a freediver dies. And it is for many reasons, but I think it's, if you follow all the different regulations that we do when we do competition freediving, we have safety divers that meet you at 50 meters sometimes. They come up with you, they swim up with you to the surface. We have a diving line which you're attached to with a lanyard. So you're always attached to the line. And if you would faint down there at, say, 100 meters, the people at the surface, they have a system so they will be able to bring you up. So they will be able to bring you up really fast. And we have like 5 free safety divers that are really good free divers as well. And they know all the procedure how to wake you up from a blackout. So therefore, there's not people dying in competition, but it's a still different story when it comes to training. And I think that has to be said. Freediving is a wonderful activity in sport, but you need to have respect for it. And if listeners would like to go out freediving in the pool or in the ocean or in the lake, there's a number one rule for freediving is to never freedive alone, and always freedive with a trained safety, someone who has done a freediving course. Otherwise it's deadly. It's really dangerous. It's a lot of people just trying it by themselves, and if you faint, that's it. But if you have someone who knows how to react if someone blacks out, and I can take it briefly, it's quite simple. We call it blow, tap, talk. You take the person to the surface, and you take off the mask, and then you tap on the cheeks, and then you blow around the cheeks. And thereafter you say the person's name, and then the person wakes up. So it's these 3 things that you have to remember if you see someone blacking out in the water. It's about that you have to remind the body that it's over the surface, that it's safe to breathe again. Because it's a kind of like a self-defense mechanism that happens when a person faints under the water. Because we still have a lot of oxygen in the system. But the body has to be very reminded to breathe. So, of course, all of this has led to some kind of fear, knowing that it's dangerous and knowing what can happen. But with the amount of respect that I have for the ocean now, it's still so that while I'm going down there and I'm free falling down to, say, 85 meters, I'm not thinking about the fear. I'm only thinking about the present moment. And that goes for most of the extreme sports, that to be able to perform in an extreme sport and in this kind of extreme environment, you have to be able to forget about the fear and to tap into the flow state. And if you're not in the flow state when you're freediving, it's impossible to break records or to dive as deep as you possibly can. You have to be able to tap into the flow state. And the interesting part there, when I started to experiencing the flow state, is that doing a record dive when in a flow state is not hard. It feels kind of playful, and you're not struggling doing it. It is flowing, everything's flowing, and you come up there and you've been enjoying the dive, and that's when you know that you've been in a flow state. And that has helped me with the fear as well, like being able to tap into that and knowing about all these triggers in the flow and to feel safe. And that's the safest way to do a sport like this, to train up the technique and being able to perfect the technique so that when you go to perform, that you can go into this flow state and then do it as easy as you can. And I think that has been the most important thing for me when it comes to dealing with the fear. Just being able to go into this very interesting state of mind. But to be able to do that, you have to to practice a lot before. You have to perfect your technique. So when you go down there, you don't have to think about how you fin correctly and so on and so forth.
What does training out of the water look like? What do you do when you're not able to get to water? I know I've seen you laying on table and doing breathing practices. What does it mostly consist of?
Yeah, because I was in Sweden for half of the year when I was competing the most. Therefore, every time when I woke up, I was holding my breath for quite a while, every morning. So if anyone wants to try to hold a breath, the best thing to do it is in the morning, before breakfast, and before coffee, because food and digestion takes up a lot of oxygen, and coffee is raising the heart rate. So what I did then was to, every morning when I woke up, I was holding my breath in the sessions for during 1 hour. So I was doing that before, because I didn't like the pool. I wasn't training that much in the pool, although I was living in the 5th floor at that time. So every time when I was arriving home, I was walking up the 5 staircases on a breath hold.
Oh, wow.
So every time when I arrived home, I had this as a goal. I would never take the elevator, and I will never walk up the stairs breathing. Every time when I walked up to the apartment, I was always holding my breath. And
people would say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And you just
yeah, yeah.
give them the thumbs up.
Look like I'm passing out all the time. First, I think when it comes, that's also part of the training. Being able to just train really, really hard. So then when you go out to perform at a competition, it's easier. You train really hard, so then when you go to a competition place, it feels easier. And I think for me, what also really was a big thing with training was to build up carbon dioxide tolerance. So a lot of people don't know about this, but the reason why we feel like we have to breathe when we hold our breath has nothing to do with oxygen, but it has everything to do with carbon dioxide. So when we breathe, when we're sitting like this and we breathe, we're breathing gases. And there's gases in our body that is accumulating as well. So when we hold our breath, the carbon dioxide is increasing if we don't exhale. And when we feel this urge to breathe and we feel like, okay, now I feel out of breath, we still have like 98 or 100% of oxygen saturation in our body, but our carbon dioxide is just increasing. So that's the number one thing a freediver has to start with, like increasing the CO2 tolerance. And that is also very applicable to different sports as well. So like if you have a really great carbon dioxide tolerance, you also don't get out of breath doing other sports like running or biking and so on. So like being able to train this is really great. And the way to do this is just to, like one thing is to, like if you bike, like breathe through your nose as much as possible, even though you feel the air hunger. You feel like, okay, I have to breathe through my mouth, then close your mouth and breathe through your nose. And building up the CO2 awareness as well. Feel like, okay, now I have a bit of air hunger, but it's nothing negative, because actually what it does when you have higher levels of carbon dioxide is that you're actually getting more oxygen to the cells. Because if we would sit here and just hyperventilate for 5 minutes, we would probably pass out. And that's because we don't get oxygen to our brain, because the oxygen is just clinging on to the hemoglobin. But the opposite thing happens if we underbreathe. So if we underbreathe and we have a little bit of air hunger, we get even more oxygen to our cells and to our brain. You probably know it's good to breathe through your nose and to not be a mouth breather. But it's also beneficial when you do sports to breathe with your nose as much as possible. Of course, when you're sprinting, it's impossible. But when you do long distance running and so on, it's a good idea to breathe through your nose as much as possible. Also because you warm up the air. And there's a lot of different other reasons to do it, which I think that if you do that, you will be able to perform better, and as well being able to get this onset of urge to breathe later and this air hunger later. So that was big part of my training as well. Like I used to go running as well a lot. So when I run, I always breathe through my nose, even though I feel like it's hard. No, it's a really great way to just get more oxygen to your body.
You know, I know with the competitions, there's literally a rope hanging down. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that kind of setup before, and you go down the rope, and like you said, you're attached and go up, and it's always just some body of water where it's just blue as far as you can see. It's not like that. The water is beautiful, of course, but not no features or anything to look at. It's all about focus on the, getting the record or going as far as you can. What is one of the coolest things you've ever seen freediving, or one of the most interesting experiences with either marine life or just scenery? Just tell us about some of the things that get opened up to you because of freediving.
What really pops up in my mind when you hear this question is, before I flew back to Sweden last time, I was in the Philippines. This was 2 years ago. And I was there during the pandemic. And we were not allowed to go into the water for some reason. Because they had all these restrictions. So
right.
The locals, of course, they were allowed to go into the water, to spearfish and to hunt and all that. I respect that. But no Westerners. You were allowed to go in the water. The Coast Guard were patrolling the area. I was living on a small island called Panglao in the Philippines. Coast Guard used to patrol there and this shout from this microphone or this megaphone to say, like, no white people are allowed in the water. And we were there I was stuck there for 6 months during the pandemic. There was no way to travel anywhere because we were on a small island. So we were like, okay, we have to find a way to go freediving. So me and my friend, we decided, okay, we will go out hidden by the darkness at midnight. When it's full moon, you can still see quite well. You still have visibility down to 10 or 15 meters under the water. So we decided we put on the wetsuits midnight, and then we go out when there's no Coast Guard patrolling the area. So we went out, we swam out, we put out the buoy down to 60 meters depth. And it was really calm, it was full moon, and it just lit up the sea. Every time you moved under the water, it was the plankton under the water shining up. And they were just shining like stars every time you moved around on the water. And then I remember this time, because to be able to freedive, you have to first be on the surface for a while to meditate, to just concentrate on your breathing and to calm down. And it was just this silence that you usually never experience. Usually we hear boats and so on when you're breathing up for a dive. And then I started going down. After 15 meters, I feel like the free fall is coming, and I stop moving my body and I start sinking down. And I have my eyes open. I usually have my eyes closed when I freedive, but I wanted to see the bioluminescence flashing through my eyes, and they were just sparkling up in front of my eyes. And the deeper I went, the more they were coming. And at the bottom of the line, we have this bottom weight. So I reached the bottom there at 60 meters, and it's just this complete darkness down there. no lights was getting there. And I remember I was sitting on the bottom weight, and I was kind of like swinging under the water there, and I was hanging under the water at 60 meters for, I think it was around a minute, just looking around. And I had this feeling that I was in the outer space. Every time I was moving my hand, I saw this bioluminescence like sparkling around me. And I never felt the urge to breathe throughout this entire dive, which is also quite interesting. And from being down there, I just felt like I didn't want to go up. I just wanted to stay down there, but I decided, of course, like there's more things to experience. Like there's more things up there as well. So I started going up as well, and it was just a very beautiful experience, and like a very mind-altering experience. We have this thing that we usually say with freediving. Like people ask the question, "What's the difference between scuba diving and freediving?" And we have this silly quote saying, like, scuba divers, they dive to look around, and freedivers go within, dive to look within, and there I really felt that it was a very powerful experience. Like it was something about that experience that changed something in me as well. And I just came up, and this dive was probably around 4 minutes. This entire dive, never had the urge to breathe throughout the whole dive. And this is something that I always bring with me, and that I always will think back at. And it always reminds me of that we're so much water, human body. And I told you that one of the most fascinating things that I found with freediving was that to explore the free fall and to be able to dive deeper and experience a deeper sense of relaxation in the free fall. But it's also to get back to the origin, in a sense, to get back to the nature and to be as close to nature as possible. There is a thing that every human body has inbuilt, and this is something we call the mammalian dive response. This happens to every person. As soon as we put our face in the water, our heart rate slows down. You've probably seen in the movies that people put water on their faces before they go into an important meeting to calm down. And this is actually something that happens in our body. That's as soon as we put our face in the water, we put cold water on our face, our heart rate slows down. We have sensors around our face and our mouth that is detecting this water. And that's the first thing that happens. That's the first mammalian dive response. Heart rate slows down, called bradycardia. And the second thing that goes when we experience pressure is that our blood gets redirected from our arms and from our legs to the core to protect our lungs. This is exactly what happens to seals and dolphins and other mammalian animals and mammalian creatures that spend all their time in the water. They have it to a greater extent, but humans still have it. People don't understand why humans have it, but everyone has it. And this experience that I had when I was going down there, and I was able to hold my breath for 4 minutes down there at 60 meters. I felt like I was belonging to the ocean. I'm not a primate that should be up walking on the ground. I'm also a sea creature at that point, and we can train our bodies to get very, very comfortable down there and to be comfortable in the water. And everyone has this inbuilt in them. It happens to everyone. And I think that experience really reminded me of that, and I found that so fascinating. And this is what I love to tell my students when I was just doing earlier today, I was doing the freediving course. I'm teaching the freediving course usually, and this is one of the things that I love to tell them, because I'm really passionate about this, to remind people that we really have this inbuilt response in us, to take us back to the nature. Like we're supposed to be in the water and be close to the nature as possible. And people feel good at being close to nature. We don't have to dive to 80 meters or 100 meters. Just looking at the body of sea, body of ocean, calms the mind. It's something called the blue mind that people have been studying for a while now, which shows that when we're just looking at the ocean calms us, brings down our heart rate. And it happens to everyone. And that's a really powerful therapy method as well. So when you feel stressed or when you feel anxious, just go to a body of water and just like being able to just look at the water. And of course, spend time in the water is also super helpful.
I live near the ocean, and I can attest that it's all of us go there to relax or to calm down, or whether it be a stressful day or just a time to just relax. Yeah, you're right. We do that. Just everyone does it naturally, but I imagine the effects even more so down in the water for prolonged periods of time. How do you suggest folks maybe get into this? Obviously, it really took off quickly for you. Within 2 years, you were starting to do records and go and compete in winning competitions and whatnot. What do you suggest folks start with, and how should they start?
So number one, find a freediving instructor in your area. So that can just be an easy Google search, freediving school, and then the area you live in. And just find someone who can teach you. It's very easy to go on YouTube and social media and just find tips and tricks on how to hold your breath for longer. But to be able to do it in a safe manner, number one thing, find good instructor, good freediving school, and go from there. And what I did, which I found most helpful, is to also to train carbon dioxide tolerance. So to train yourself to be able to cope with the urge to breathe, with this uncomfortable feeling, and to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And that was a big thing for me. Just to lay in my bed, like it's completely safe, just to hold the breath in the bed, as long as you're not close to the water, and to hold your breath there. So just doing this kind of breath holds is really important. And then if you want to continue to another level, it's really helpful to be in a place where you can also dive deep. And that's the reason why there's so few people that actually go into like the competitions and to go to freediving competitions, because you have to be in an area which is like really warm, where the water is pleasant, no current, and deep. And there you have to live for 6 months of the time. And for most people, that's not really possible. But it's something that you have to devote your life to if you want to be good at something. And it goes for everything. You have to devote your life to it. And freediving is something like for everyone who's listening. Everyone can be really good at it. Like, there's very few sports like this. I used to think of this, this kind of sports, like we have golf, which you could probably, I had a grandfather who became pro when he was 60.
Wow.
Started when he was 50. So golf is one of the things where you can become really, really good late in life. And we have dart as well. You probably can become very, very good at dart late in life. Freediving is also one of these things where you can start super late in life and just explore and see what happens, and just go from there and just enjoy the moment of the process when you're freediving. And some freediving competitions I've been to, there's been people 70 years old still diving to 80 meters. And that's incredible to see. It just shows that the human body is capable to so much more than we think. And this is also something that freediving reminds you of. You think that, okay, I cannot dive deeper than 20 meters. I mean, let alone 10 meters. And you see that you're breaking these boundaries all the time. If you can do it with freediving, I think you can do it with other things as well. And it just gives you an important message as well in life, that the mind puts boundaries on things that you can easily break. Like you have this inner voice telling you, okay, I cannot do this. I can never run that far. And then you do it, and you realize that this voice in your head was just talking shit. It was nothing true about this. And it's very, very evident in a sport like freediving, where you hear this voice all the time telling you, oh gosh, I cannot dive to 30 meters. I need to dive to 31 meters. Just telling you this all of the time. And then after a while, you just stop listening to it. And that's a great relief. You know, with a lot of sports, it's the same thing. You just have to stop listening to this doubting part of your mind. And that can also change a big part of your life in other respects.
Speaking of that, what are some of the biggest benefits freediving has provided your life outside of the water?
So the main thing is the stress level, I would say. You know, like I remember after the first year, from when I started freediving, I was in Bangkok airport, and my flight was delayed, meaning that my next flight that I would take I would probably not be able to take that, and so on. I was standing there in line, and you know, before I started freediving, I would probably be quite stressed and be quite annoyed at this situation, having to buy more, you know, another flight ticket. But this time I was kind of okay with it. I was like, this is nothing. Like, if you're able to deal with the stress in the environment of 85 meters depth, holding your breath, the other things in life doesn't feel as stressful. So you're kind of building up this stress-free mind, in a sense. You're building up a resilience in your mind, I would say. Being able to go through different, like, hard trainings in freediving as well makes other things feel easier in life comparatively to when you were freediving and you were struggling doing a free dive and so on, and then the other things feels really easy. So that has been a major thing, just feeling that the stress level has been going down a lot. And that has been one thing. But like I also mentioned before, being able to push the boundaries and see that you're capable of much more than you think, that there's no good reason to trust this inner voice that you have in your mind, and to be more mindful of that. I was never into like mindfulness before I started freediving, but when you freedive, it's all meditation, you know, like it's all about just being here and now. And if you're down there at 80 meters and you start thinking about the surface, it's really dangerous. You know, you start getting stressed, and that could bit. And you have to be completely present in the moment when you freedive. So that has been another thing. I've been more in the here and now since I started freediving, and then more conscious of my own thoughts in my own brain. So there's been this kind of things that has really benefited me. Like I said before, freediving is 90% mental and 10% physical. And so for the physical aspects, it's also helped me, you know, like when I go out running, I don't feel the urge to breathe. I don't feel out of breath, I would say, as fast. So I can continue running for longer distances without feeling the urge to breathe and or feeling the air hunger. So that has been another really big factor. that has helped me.
It's fantastic. Awesome. Well, was there any closing thoughts you wanted to share before we wrap this up? And where can folks find more if they want to learn more about what you're doing and how to freedive?
Yeah, so I have my website, alexanderfreediver.com. And I have my Instagram, Alexander Freediver, Facebook page where I'm not as active, but I have that as well, Alexander Freediver there as well. So if anyone wants to get in touch, or if they want to do a freediving course, feel free to just contact me, or anyhow, like if you just want to have tips around freediving or whatever you feel like, just get in touch and message me and I'll make sure to answer.
Awesome. Well, Alexander, thank you for joining us at Adventure Sports Podcast. And keep diving. Stay safe. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
This week on RVER, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm sorry, I can't operate on that vehicle.
But doctor, you took an oath.
That RV, it's my son's RV.
Oh, doctor, isn't there anything you can
I'm not a miracle worker, Sheila. I'm an RV surgeon, trained to save the lives of large injured recreational vehicles, which is definitely a real profession.
When your RV really needs saving, Progressive has you covered. See if you could save with a leader in RV insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, covered subject to policy terms.